Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Soul-u-tions podcast. You definitely are going to want to stick around for this episode because I am going to be talking about the sin of pride and how we can change our thoughts and belief systems and actions around pride and maybe start bragging a little bit about the things and accomplishments that we've worked so hard for. So take a listen to the intro and I'll meet you on the other side.
Einstein said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." Most everyone in the world is solving their problems the wrong way. Our problems come from our thinking, and we can solve them with our thinking. So, whether you're at your lowest, just trying to grow, or whether you are trying to sustain growth over your lifetime, join us as we push the boundaries of our current thinking and redefine how we find solutions.
The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibilities.
So I was thinking about calling this episode Bragging Rights. And it was really interesting. In the Soul-u-tions lab, in our Tuesday class, we were talking about this issue of pride and how women, more so than men, are socialized to be likable, while men tend to be more socialized to be powerful. And so in this quest to remain likable, women tend to be quiet about the things that they do well. They tend to under-discuss their accomplishments. They tend to defer their attention to other people and to their accomplishments. And talking about this, I think it's so interesting because whenever I'm teaching a subject, I'm always student number one here. And I really have a hard time when someone says, "So what's going on?" I really have a hard time about taking a minute to brag on myself. I have a hard time telling people like the things that I have been working on that I'm proud of. David at Get Up Productions is always talking to me about, he said, "Listen, when people ask what you're up to, you need to tell them about your latest podcast that you record." And it really takes a concerted effort for me to kind of put that out there that this is something that I'm doing. And the sad thing about that is that how are people going to find out about this amazing resource that I spend so much time on and how it could help them if I'm not sharing it with the world? But what I have found is that a lot of women do this. I'm not the only one who does it. And I have to admit this, I'm often a little jealous of women who are able to talk about their accomplishments, the things that they're working on and that they're really proud of. I notice that when they speak up for themselves, when they share the things that they're doing, something inside of me is like, "Oh, gosh, that's not fair. How come they get to do it and I don't?" And so I've been spending some time reflecting on this for myself and also studying it, doing some research on why does this happen? How common is this? And what can I do to change it for myself and for other women? And one of the interesting things that I've also noticed, I mentioned about like it's very unusual to have a female friend who just speaks up about her stuff. But every now and then it does happen. So noticing that I feel that way about that. But if my husband is amazing at talking about all the things he's working on, people will say, "Hey, what have you been up to?" And he'll say, "Oh my gosh, we're working on this really cool island project off the coast of Beaufort in South Carolina." And then he starts going into like what's going to make this project so cool and how it's undeveloped and the history of the island and their intention to bring wellness and the concept of wellness onto this island and what all they want to do with it. They want it to be a haven for the arts and nature and just a place to get grounded and getting back to yourself, right? A lot of the stuff that we talk about here on the Solutions podcast, it's so easy for him to talk about it. Now, he is the baby and I am the first child, and there are some of these kind of dynamics that are going on. But we've been married for 31 years now, and he's always had a great sense of ease in sharing with other people what he's doing. And I have always had a great sense of dis-ease in this area. Why? Why do I have this great sense of dis-ease? Why do other women have this great sense of dis-ease? And if I ask people in the Soul-Shine Lab, all the women who are members, I'm like, tell me what you're up to. Let's celebrate something. Tell me, I want you to brag on something about yourself. And it is absolutely crickets, like uncomfortable silence that I have to hold as the facilitator of the group. And then slowly someone will talk and they'll say something that, maybe their kid has done, or they'll talk about it in relationship to, this thing worked out for me. I was able to do XYZ because of someone else. And so we have been focused, and we're going to be focused for the next month in particular on kind of sitting with our own discomfort in this area and starting to change how we feel about the things that mean a lot to us and that we work so hard to do, and about sharing it with the world. And so when this happens, whenever there's a place that is hard for me and it's something that I want to change in my life, I always start with noticing, is there a place that I do this with ease, right? And like I just shared about my husband, noticing how other people do it with ease and wondering what it is about them. And it usually is, and goes back to my coaching model, it usually is they just have a different thought about it than I do. And when we're talking about gender socialization or norms and different behavioral patterns that we see in certain groups of people, really the difference between me and him is that I have this rule in my head, which is don't talk too much about yourself, Tara. Leave room for other people. It's really important for you to be liked by the group, to be welcomed, which means to this unconscious part of ourselves that I can't do anything that's threatening to other people, right? So just kind of keep all the big stuff that you're working on the down low here. And my husband has a different thought in his head, which is they really want to hear about this. This is a really super exciting project that I'm working on. It's so cool, and I want to share it with you. And so there's nothing about this sense of people not liking him if he shares the cool stuff that he does. This goes back again to that kind of place of positioning of power versus likability. That doesn't come into the mix in his mindset. And for women who do this, the ones who do it, I've noticed, are a little bit younger than I am. And they're kind of special, and they stand out in their ability to speak up about the projects that they're working on. And they, like Turner, have this idea of this is a really cool thing. People need to hear about it. People want to hear about it. And so there's place number one to start, right? Okay, who does this thing that's hard for me to do, and they do it with ease? And what is it that they're thinking about this thing that they do that I'm not thinking? And could I begin to adopt their thoughts and mindset about it. So, when David tells me that when people ask you what you're up to, you should tell them about your latest podcast. I am spending some active time while I'm walking, while I'm driving, even when I'm journaling, thinking about scenarios, future scenarios. I know this sounds crazy, but this is what it takes to change your mindset around anything. So even if this isn't the thing that you feel like you need to change your mindset on, the steps will remain the same no matter what the topic is. So I have to kind of do this future rehearsal, put myself in a scenario like, oh, I know I'm going to be in a social situation next week. Fun party, fun this. And I know I'm going to get asked by a lot of people when I'm in that social situation, hey, what's new with you? What are you up to? What's going on with you? And so on my walks, I am practicing saying like, oh my gosh, I have been really working on this podcast this year. And I'm really been focusing on the topics that I've worked on and blah, blah, blah. And it's really going well. I love working with these guys at Get Up Production. And I've done some really cool topics that I think are important to women in midlife, and women in general right now. And so then I'll share the topic. And even now you can hear me like, this is still fresh and new. So there's a very long intro you could hear to me even getting to the point, right? To, oh my gosh, I just recorded this great podcast. I'm so excited. Or this podcast just dropped today on this, and I cannot wait to hear how people respond to it. You see, that was so much quicker. But for me, it takes that thinking through it and practicing it and getting it to that point. So that's step number one. Whenever I'm trying to do something new, to change something, I look to other people. I get curious about how come this is so easy for them. It isn't for me. What is it they're thinking that I'm not thinking? And then I start to kind of rehearse being in situations where I will have the opportunity to put this into practice. So that's number one. Number two is I look, as I mentioned just a minute ago, I look for places where I already do it with ease. So I was talking to my son, Brennan, today, and he has just finished his second year at the College of Charleston in this REACH program. And I am beyond proud of Brennan and what he has accomplished in the 2 years at that program. And this year in particular was really challenging for him. He had roommate challenges that absolutely broke my heart. When your 21-year-old is calling you and they're choked up about how someone else that they're living with is treating them, it's really heartbreaking as a parent to sit there and hold that discomfort and talk them, listen to them and help them think through what they want to do to advocate for themselves. And so Brennan's year started out his first semester in a suite, and he had a roommate, and there was another room with two young men. And his suite mate spent a lot of time with his girlfriend. And the other guy, one of the other two guys had a girlfriend. He's like, he wanted to flip-flop rooms with Brennan. And Brennan's like, I kind of like having this amount of time to myself in this room to myself. So I'm not going to switch. And then this roommate kind of started kind of making some bigger moves. He still wanted that spot. He ended up reporting his own roommate, saying that that wasn't a match and having him kicked out of the suite. Then he arranged it over Christmas to flip-flop rooms without Brennan's consent. So Brennan starts the second semester with a foreign exchange student, which just bothered him that the other two boys had not spoken to him and gotten his consent to this change. And then the foreign exchange student, after about a week of living with Brennan, he's like, I don't think I want to live here. And he asked to be moved. He was terribly homesick. And Brennan, this other guy in Brennan's suite said, you drove him away. And this was just so hard as a parent to hear all of these things. Ended up, Brennan took all these steps to go to housing and advocated for himself, and eventually was moved into a new suite in the end of February of his sophomore year with 3 other young men, and he spent time getting to know them. And so as he drove home from school, he packed things up and, got checked out of the dorm, and his roommate for the last 2.5 months, he said, helped him put his stuff in the car. I just said, hey, Brennan, aren't you so proud of yourself for everything that you have accomplished this year? What you accomplished as a young person, living with someone and navigating all of those challenges is truly remarkable. And I hope you're really, really proud of it. You did this, you faced this, and then you faced the next hurdle, and then you faced the next hurdle. And I broke every hurdle down for him. Just said, can't you feel it? He goes, yes, Mom, I'm really proud of myself. And then he worked 2 different internships, and he made a group of friends in his first internship because that's part of his curriculum in this program. In the fall, he loved it. And when he came back in the spring, he had to start all over. And he started in an internship that required him to drive for 30 minutes in Charleston traffic. And he advocated for himself again with the advisor to his program and said, I really would like to be put in another internship. Anyway, he ended up at a law firm, and they threw him a going away party and bought him a cake and gave him, gift cards to restaurants where he likes to eat in Charleston. And then, of course, there was the academic part of his accomplishments this year, really kind of narrowing in on a bigger focus of what he wanted to do. This is a place where being proud and bragging comes naturally to me. And it brings me such joy to break down all of these reasons why Brennan has to feel proud of himself. Similarly, with my clients, I am always like, it is such a place of joy for me to break down for them their growth, their goals that they have set for themselves, and all the work that they have put into accomplishing those goals for themselves. I mean, that truly is the job of a coach, to be there with your clients who say, I've never done this thing before. I've never been in this situation before. I don't know how to get out of it. I don't know how to create something better. Can you help me do it? And then watching them overcome all the obstacles that it takes to get to that future that they want to have for themselves. And I delight in this so much. And so that's step 2 of noticing, okay, where do I find it easy to do this thing that I don't do for myself? Oh, I find that it's really super easy for me to do it, brag, and feel proud when it comes to my children, when it comes to my clients. I'm like, oh. But when it comes to myself, I feel like I have to hold that in, right? I feel like I have to, if it was a light dimmer, and if I had the dimmer all the way up on full light when it comes to my son and my clients, when it comes to me, I think that dimmer needs to go all the way down. I just cannot shine my light on myself. And it's interesting because I don't think there's anything wrong with being proud of yourself when it comes to them. I don't have any rules in my head. I haven't been socialized to think that, oh my gosh, I can't be proud of another person. Like, I think that's really awesome to be proud of another person. So could I think that it's really awesome to be proud of myself? And, really big stretch, could I even delight in feeling proud of myself and the work that I've done, delight in the goals that I set for myself and how I get myself from one place to another, just like I'm asking my clients to do. And this is really important for me because I feel like I have to be able to walk the walk. I have to understand, like, if I'm asking my clients, if I know how important it is for my clients to be proud of themselves and for my children to be proud of themselves, for my husband and my friends to be proud of themselves, it must also be important for me to be proud of myself. How do I kind of undo all of those years of socialization here at 57? Those are a lot of years of socialization. That's like, let's just call it 53 years of socialization to undo. That's going to take some time. Could I do it in a month? I'm not sure, but could I start now? Could I start small? So then by the end of the year, could me talking about the podcast or the Soul-Shine Lab or the work that I'm doing that I'm proud of, could that just roll off my tongue really easily? So that's something that I'm really interested in developing for myself and with walking with all the women in the Soul-Shine Lab right next to them as well as my clients, because I have spent so much time thinking about it and understanding what those obstacles are that keep us from doing it. And I've also broken down how we can change this pattern with a greater sense of ease. Like step one, noticing other people who do it with ease and getting curious about what they think differently and how they think differently than you do. And step two, noticing where you already do it yourself. The third thing I do, and this is, I think, one of the benefits of being in the Soul-Shine Labs or being a client of mine, is I really do take it as my job to do the research for you. I get in there and I'm looking at, why does this happen? What's the reason why this is a common pattern? And I look for the research. I do a lot of reading on it. So step three is like understanding how this happened, understanding like why I feel so hesitant to be proud of myself or to brag on the things that I'm putting out in the world. Why do I feel so hesitant to do it? And that's why I'm talking about this as a socialized, like women are socialized to do this. Now, I want to put just a little bookmark in here, because men are socialized to do other things. There are as many groups of humans as you can group together. There are general socialized concepts that we have all grown up with and been given that just we've never questioned. And these concepts explain to a large degree how we show up in the world. I mean, there was just an article in the New York Times about firstborn daughters and how firstborn daughters take on 40% more responsibility in the family for their mothers than in contrast firstborn sons. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. What's the research behind that? Why does this happen? And so this third step is understanding that this is a bigger pattern, that it isn't just you, because so many people come to me, so many women think they feel such shame in their lives. They feel such guilt in their lives because they think that something is wrong with them. Like they internalize, oh my gosh, I can't speak up for myself. Something's wrong with me, about me, because I can't find the words to say this. Or, in my case, something must be wrong with me because I'm envious of my friend who is able to do this with ease. something must be wrong with me. I'm really ashamed of that. And what the research is gives me something to give to you to say, no, there's a really good reason why you have developed this pattern, this way of being in the world in this particular case. So I've been talking about this book on the podcast, the On Our Best Behavior book by Elise Lohan, as she's going through each of the 7 deadly sins. Pride was one of the 7 deadly sins. And it kind of in the hierarchy of the 7, it was like number 1. And we've all heard these sayings like, pride goeth before the fall, and like things that sound very dramatic, that you shouldn't be prideful of yourself, that is a sin. And so she talks about how that idea has been absorbed, over the past 1,400 years, has been absorbed into the culture, and how it is showing up in a way that is holding women back, and how it is important for women in particular. And if you happen to be a man that this is hard for, this applies to you too, right? You can do all of these same things, but it isn't this type of pride. We're not talking about something that is so outrageous that you are so egocentric that you are a narcissist, right? We're not talking about narcissistic pride. What we're talking about is just regular, old, healthy dose of a human being who is alive, who wants their life to matter, and is proud of what they are contributing to the world, and is proud of the risks that they're taking, right? And proud of the things that they are doing. And the work that you are doing, like, you're proud of the impact it makes. And when you do that, when you speak up about it, you give somebody else permission, like my husband and my friend, like that gives me permission to want to talk about it. And so Elise says that these are some of the patterns in her research she has found with women. And I'm going to read from the book. Like other women, I know better than to behave big. We must be likable and unthreatening enough to ensure everyone else feels comfortable. Our power must be cushioned. Who, me? Don't look at me. It's an impossible, this is what she said, but this is an impossible balancing act to parent any young girl to be both strong and have a sense of pride in herself, right? This is a reason why we want to begin to change this pattern. It's such a balancing act where we're always self-policing ourselves. How I said too much? Did I talk too much about myself? Like, think about the conversations where you apologize for taking up the airtime in the conversation. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I've taken up too much time and space here. That happens a lot in the Soul-u-tions Lab when women are feeling so safe in an environment to begin to discuss things. And then there's this, in their mind, there's a self-regulating kind of measurement that's going on in the back that says, okay, you've spoken about yourself, but now you may have taken up too much time that could have been someone else's. You see, this is what I'm talking about self-policing. This is the balancing act, the mental and emotional balancing act that you're engaged in, that you don't even realize you're doing it. And how nice it would be to just free ourselves from that balancing act, right? My husband can go on and on about his projects because he's so doggone excited about it. And he doesn't seem to have that governor, that sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm taking up too much space here. I need to pull it in. This might be threatening to someone. I'm just going on about it. So that is a pattern. If you recognize that pattern in yourself, you are among friends, there are lots of women in our Western society who are doing the same thing. Okay, here's another storyline: a girl who is labeled full of herself. I can remember when this happened to me. Like, I was young. There was something that I was really working hard to achieve that I accomplished. I was dancing, ballet dancer, and all of a sudden I got a role that you'd call it a breakthrough role, right? Like, I had broken through my peer group up to the next level. And one of my contemporaries in my peer group pulled me aside and said, "You're getting a little too big for your britches." I was devastated, heartbroken. This is a common pattern that we are reinforcing within our women's circles, that even young girls do. You know, oh, she's full of herself. And so what? We don't ever tell that to the breakthrough quarterback that, you know what, you're getting a little bit big for your britches. Even if, like, there are two guys competing for the starting point, nobody ever tells the other guy, "Oh, you're getting too big for your britches." It's just like, everybody give it your all, and may the best man be the starter. And so this is just an interesting thing to know, that if you have felt this way, there's a reason you felt this way, and you don't have to keep feeling this way. Like, you can begin to step out. It is safe. It is safe now to begin to step out and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm really proud of myself. I've worked really hard to get this breakthrough role." And I can be empathetic toward my friends, and you can teach your daughters to be empathetic and your sons empathetic in these situations. Like, when someone says that, like, "I know that you've worked really hard too. I know that you want to have a breakout thing too. I'm cheering for you," right? I'm alongside you. But I don't have to diminish my hard work there. So again, in this book, Elise says that this idea of big-headedness associated with pride can be traced all the way back to Pope Gregory and the 7 deadly sins. So because of this, women don't seek praise, even though they've worked hard. Elise says, "In the push for power, we have prioritized," oh my gosh, this one just got me, "have prioritized competence, convinced that effort and excellence are our best path. We raise our hands and speak up only when we're sure of the answer. We keep our heads down and put in the hours at work. We hope to be recognized for our value rather than needing to state it on the record." We hope to be recognized for our value rather than needing to state it for the record. And in this season of the Soul-u-tions podcast, I have been shining a light on this concept of the invisible mental and emotional load that women carry, especially in my generation of women in midlife right now, and how that festers into resentment. And part of that source of that comes back to this right here. Women who are hoping that their efforts in the house or at the office will be recognized, rather than letting people know what you have done. Rather than you noticing it, you valuing it, and you expressing it to other people. So I do think that changing this dynamic within yourself and then letting that change ripple out into your family, your friends, and your work, the payoff at the end of the day are these relationships that are much freer, that aren't burdened with like needing your partner who is tired from a long day's work to come home and recognize the value that you put into the family. You need to recognize that. You need to develop a sense of pride about that, right? You need to be the person who's like, I am so proud. You need to be the Brennan thinking back on the year, his second year of college, like, you know what, Mom, I am really proud of all of these things that I did. And those were all things that aren't going to show up on a report card. They are all invisible mental and emotional load. And so even helping him understand and see that what he's done is so valuable and is going to have such a greater payoff in his future and in his relationships because he went through these uncomfortable times. He has this experience of learning how to advocate for himself, learning how to be proud of himself. So, what can you do about it? What can you do about this changing this dynamic within yourself? So I've shared with you, a few ways you can notice other people in your life where it comes easy. Notice where being proud of other people, your children, spouse, friends, coworkers, where it comes easy for you and how much you delight in it. And then begin to kind of internalize that feeling. I know it's going to be really uncomfortable, but beginning to internalize that feeling about yourself, like, what if I could be this proud of myself? I mean, for instance, in the Brennan situation, what if I was so proud of all the things that I did in order to be his mother and allow him to have that space? Or in this podcasting thing, what if I was just really proud at how I've kept up with this for years and how I still haven't nailed it, but how proud I am for showing up, for the thought that I put into the topics and how I present them with you. How could I be proud of the work product? How could it just delight me? And I could think about you listening to it and it making a difference in your life. So I want you to think about that thing that you do, being so proud of it that you really begin to think about the difference that you make in someone else's life. And then just remember, just keep telling yourself, like, oh, this is just one of those areas of socialization that has been handed down to us, used to work. I don't know. I don't have to be angry about it. I can just say, like, but now this is something that I want to change. It's not working for me. It's not working for women in general. And I want to have an opportunity to change it for the next generation. So brag on yourself. Start small. You don't have to be the best bragger. It's going to feel awkward, feel uncomfortable. Imagine these future scenarios that you can put yourself in, and then just think a year from now, it will just be rolling off with ease, and you will be sharing all the cool things that you're doing in the world because the world needs to know all the cool things that you're doing. That was a long episode, friends, and y'all hung in there. It truly is a masterclass in how to change any behavior that you have, not just, I use this topic as an example, but so re-listen to it, dissect it, think about like, oh, this is how change happens. These are the things that I can do to create change in my life. And as always, come back here because we'll have more amazing podcast topics for you. And I even have some interviews that are coming up. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And know that, if you want to take this work deeper, you can always join us in the Soul-u-tions Labs. It's an amazing place where women are coming together to discuss issues and using it like a real laboratory to create change in their lives for the better. And email me, Tara@tarasimkins.com, if you have a question. That's the great thing about all this technology. And I have time now in my empty nest days I'd love to answer your questions about this. So until next time, my friends, have a great day.
'Cause I ain't done living the life I'm meant to lead. And I ain't done loving the ones who cared for me. The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibilities. The left and the right and some faith in the fight.